Small garden design ideas transform tiny spaces into stunning green retreats. When I envision the creation of a garden within a confined space, I see it as an act of architectural storytelling, a narrative that begins not with limitations but with possibilities. Every square foot becomes a canvas, every surface a potential frame for beauty and function to merge. Just as in the drafting of a building, precision matters, but so does the poetry of the experience we wish to create. A small garden, when designed with intention, becomes more than a patch of greenery. It transforms into an extension of the home, a living composition that elevates daily life. It speaks quietly yet powerfully, reminding us that scale does not define significance. The first principle that governs such a garden is the notion of verticality. When the ground plane offers little room for expansion, the sky invites us upward. Imagine walls, fences, and trellises no longer as boundaries, but as opportunities, living tapestries that climb, weave, and soften hard surfaces with life. Vertical gardens serve not only as decoration but also as architecture in their own right, dividing spaces, creating privacy, and offering a rhythm of textures that shift with the seasons. Ivy cascading down a trellis, jasmine releasing its fragrance at dusk, or even climbing tomatoes producing their fruit at arm's reach. All of these choices are gestures that transform walls into canvases of life. They conserve precious ground area while introducing depth, layering, and intimacy into a space that might otherwise feel flat. Alongside vertical design comes the art of containers. To an architect, containers are like modular units, movable, adaptable, and endlessly reconfigurable. A pot, a planter, or a raised bed is not just a vessel for soil. It is a tool for defining zones, drawing attention, and shaping movement. By clustering containers in certain corners, one can create a sense of enclosure, almost like designing outdoor rooms. By aligning them in pathways, one can guide the visitor through a journey, a gentle choreography from one moment to another. The flexibility of container gardening allows for continuous evolution. Plants can be repositioned with the light, seasons can be staged in cycles, and the very atmosphere of the garden can be altered in a single afternoon. Herbs near the kitchen become part of the daily rhythm of cooking. Flowering plants beside seating areas invite rest and conversation. Sculptural succulents in minimalist pots become focal points, almost like art installations beneath the open sky. But design is not complete without the integration of furniture that respects and enhances the flow of the garden. In a compact backyard or patio, every piece must be considered as both functional and sculptural. A bench that conceals a planter beneath it, a foldable table that can disappear when not in use, a raised bed that doubles as seating. These are the architectural responses to the challenge of space. Such furniture is not merely accessory but integral, merging the utility of living with the serenity of growing. In this way, the garden is not simply observed, it is inhabited, used and embraced. It becomes a place where the human presence and natural life coexist in harmony, where design is measured not just by sight but by touch, comfort and daily rituals. Minimalism, too, plays a crucial role in the orchestration of such spaces. In architecture, restraint often leads to clarity, and the same holds true in gardening. To fill a small garden with countless species is to dilute its character, to clutter its rhythm. Instead, a curated palette allows harmony to emerge, perhaps a series of greens punctuated by bursts of seasonal blooms, or a composition of low-maintenance succulents and tall grasses that sway with the breeze. The colours, textures and forms must converse with one another, just as the materials and lines of a building must achieve balance. A consistent palette bridges the garden with the home's interior, extending the architectural language outward. Wood, stone, metal, and plant. Each material speaks, and together they form a dialogue that creates cohesion. As evening approaches, the importance of light reveals itself. Light, to an architect, is the most powerful material of all. In a small garden, lighting transforms not only visibility, but also perception. String lights suspended above can create a canopy of stars. Solar lanterns can punctuate corners with warmth, and ground lighting can trace paths with gentle precision. Light draws attention to vertical gardens, to clusters of containers, to the contours of furniture, ensuring that the garden does not disappear with the sun but continues its life into the night. In this, the outdoor area becomes an extension of the living room, a place of gathering and contemplation, an environment that shifts fluidly from day to evening. Sustainability adds yet another dimension, not as trend, but as principle. A small space is the perfect ground for eco-friendly practices. Rainwater collection systems can be discreetly integrated, compost bins can serve as living cycles of renewal, and drought-resistant plants can offer resilience in changing climates. The garden becomes not only a sanctuary of beauty, but also a statement of responsibility. Edible gardens in small containers, herbs, vegetables, fruits, make the act of cultivation both practical and intimate. To step outside and harvest a sprig of basil, a tomato warmed by the sun, or a handful of strawberries is to collapse the distance between design and life. The garden is no longer ornamental alone, it is nourishing, sustaining, and deeply human. And yet, all of this must return to one central theme: integration. An open concept home flows without barriers, and the garden must reflect that ethos. Large glass doors, floor-to-ceiling windows, and consistent flooring materials blur the boundary between inside and out. A wooden deck that extends from the living room becomes part of the same language as the planters it holds. A stone floor that continues into the patio creates continuity, a seamless thread that ties spaces together. The garden, though small, becomes not separate but continuous, an essential part of the home's architecture, not an afterthought but a deliberate extension of it. What emerges from this vision is not a compromise but a celebration. Small space gardens are not defined by what they lack but by what they offer: intimacy, clarity, creativity, and a tangible connection to nature. They are places of relaxation, conversation, and reflection, spaces that encourage us to pause, to breathe, to engage with life at a slower rhythm. They are proof that design, when thoughtful, has no dependence on scale. A modest backyard, a narrow patio, a compact balcony, each can become a sanctuary, a crafted environment that carries the weight of intention and the lightness of beauty. This is the architecture of small gardens, an architecture that climbs upward with vertical life, that moves flexibly through containers, that adapts with multifunctional furniture, that speaks with minimal palettes, that glows with thoughtful lighting, that thrives with sustainability, and that integrates seamlessly with the home. It is a design not only to be admired but to be lived, a constant reminder that within constraints lies the potential for true innovation. When I expand the conversation about designing small gardens, I think of it as entering a second phase of architectural exploration. If the first movement was about laying foundations and identifying guiding principles, then this next movement is about depth, about sculpting experiences, weaving atmosphere, and refining the nuances that transform a modest outdoor corner into a living work of design. A small garden does not merely exist to be seen. It is meant to be felt, traversed, and remembered. It is a carefully orchestrated balance of textures, rhythms, and spatial strategies that elevate it from functional green space into an extension of artful living. Consider for a moment the way vertical structures shape our perception of height and enclosure. A trellis with climbing plants not only brings greenery upward, but also adjusts the psychological scale of a space. Where walls once hemmed in the eye, vertical life draws it skyward, giving the illusion of openness. This interplay of vertical growth and horizontal ground plane is no different from the way an architect manipulates ceiling height and floor layout within a compact apartment. The garden becomes taller, richer, more dynamic than its square footage suggests. Layered vegetation, creeping plants at the base, mid-level shrubs and vines soaring overhead, adds a dimensionality that mimics the composition of a forest, scaled into a human-sized frame. The containers, too, become more than mere vessels. They act as mobile architecture, as elements of rhythm and punctuation. Picture a collection of terracotta pots placed in deliberate asymmetry beside a sleek modern bench, or consider raised wooden beds that establish structure and clarity amid softer foliage. Each container is an architectural unit, with its geometry, material, and scale carefully chosen to complement both the plants it holds and the overall composition of the space. Just as windows frame views within a building, containers frame microcosms of life within the garden. Their arrangement tells a story, guiding the inhabitant through a sequence of impressions: an herb corner for culinary rituals, a flowering ensemble that signals arrival, a quiet meditative nook anchored by sculptural succulents. Furniture, when designed thoughtfully, becomes a hinge between human presence and natural rhythm. A foldable table is not just a convenience, it is a declaration that the garden is both a retreat and a gathering place. A planter bench is more than seating. It is an acknowledgement that greenery belongs at the very heart of the social experience. When people rest upon a bench that also grows lavender at its edge, they are not merely occupying space, they are participating in the life of the garden. The boundary between object and organism, between the built and the grown, dissolves. This is the art of multifunctionality, merging utility with grace, compressing purpose without sacrificing atmosphere. The selection of plants is where architectural discipline meets ecological sensitivity. Too often, in small gardens, there is a temptation to overpopulate the space, to bring in as many colours, textures and forms as possible. But restraint reveals sophistication. A garden with 5 or 6 carefully chosen species can often speak louder than one with dozens competing for attention. A consistent theme, whether it is the soft greens of ferns, the architectural lines of grasses, or the delicate rhythm of succulents, gives the garden a voice. Accents of seasonal flowers or fragrant herbs can then punctuate this voice with variation. Much like ornament in architecture, enriches but does not overwhelm the structure. Harmony arises from repetition, contrast, and thoughtful selection. Lighting, when examined in this second stage of design, shifts from being a mere accessory to becoming an atmospheric tool. In daylight, the garden thrives in natural sun, shadows falling in organic patterns. But when evening comes, it is the architect's responsibility to give the garden another life. A pathway lined with low, soft ground lighting creates a sense of ceremony, guiding footsteps as if along a sacred journey. A canopy of suspended string lights turns a modest patio into an outdoor room of celebration. A single spotlight aimed at a vertical garden transforms it into living sculpture, its leaves and textures cast into dramatic relief. Light not only extends functionality into the night, but also reshapes perception, carving intimacy, spectacle, or quietude depending on its placement and tone. Beyond function and beauty, there lies sustainability, a principle that must remain at the forefront of small garden design. Compact spaces offer unique opportunities for eco-friendly integration. A rain barrel, discreetly tucked into a corner, provides water for the garden without demanding from municipal systems. A composting unit transforms kitchen waste into nourishment for the soil, closing the cycle of life. Drought-tolerant species reduce the burden of maintenance and ensure longevity in uncertain climates. Sustainability here is not an afterthought, but an ethos that underpins the garden's resilience. In this sense, the garden is not only an environment crafted for human comfort, but also one that participates in a larger ecological dialogue, where design serves both household and habitat. The integration with the home's architecture must remain seamless. An open concept dwelling thrives on continuity, on dissolving boundaries between zones of life. The garden becomes an external room, its floor, walls and ceiling designed with as much care as the interiors. A wooden deck that extends directly from the living area draws the eye outward, erasing the threshold between house and nature. A glass facade ensures the garden is visible from within, turning it into a backdrop for everyday activity. The textures of stone, wood, or metal in the outdoor area mirror those inside, creating a unity of language. The inhabitant does not step into a different world, but continues within the same architectural rhythm, only translated into green and sky. At this stage, the garden is not an isolated pocket of greenery, but an essential chapter of the home's narrative. It is where cooking extends into harvesting herbs, where conversation continues beneath lantern light, where solitude finds comfort in natural quiet. The design, though compact, serves a spectrum of human needs: practical, emotional, social, and reflective. It does not compete with larger landscapes but asserts its unique identity: intimate, precise, deliberate. The scale, far from being a limitation, becomes the very quality that defines its charm. The closeness invites intimacy, the clarity ensures cohesion, and the simplicity allows every detail to carry weight. This is the second layer of design: the careful sculpting of atmosphere, the choreography of space, the disciplined curation of plant life, and the poetic use of light. It is about taking the raw strategies, vertical gardening, containers, multifunctional elements, and refining them into a harmonious ensemble that resonates with both architecture and life. It is the moment where the garden ceases to be a mere project and begins to reveal itself as an experience, by an everyday retreat crafted with the precision of an architect and the sensitivity of a gardener. As the vision of a small garden reaches its final movement, it is here that the design reveals its maturity. This stage is not merely about the placement of plants, the configuration of furniture, or the addition of light. It is about weaving all elements together into a narrative that is lived daily, a composition that reflects both the discipline of architecture and the intimacy of personal ritual. In a small space, every detail is magnified, every choice resonates. The garden is not a static picture, it is a dynamic landscape, alive with the rhythms of growth, change, and human interaction. The art of continuity becomes paramount, just as an architect ensures that corridors lead naturally to rooms and that facades speak the same language as interiors, so too must the garden blend seamlessly into the architecture of the home. Flooring materials can flow uninterrupted, creating the sense of a single stage upon which life plays out, both inside and out. A transition of stone or wood underfoot allows the inhabitant to step across a threshold without sensing its presence. Visual cues align. The grain of timber furniture echoes the lines of interior beams. The cool texture of stone outside reflects the countertops within. The garden is not attached to the home, it is part of it, inseparable. A continuation of design that ignores walls and embraces fluidity. The role of seasons deepens this dialogue. A small garden has the power to shift its character across the year, offering the inhabitants a cycle of renewal. In spring, young growth signals vitality and fresh beginnings. Summer fills the garden with lush abundance, creating shade, fragrance, and vibrancy. Autumn introduces warm tones, a gentle slowing down, an atmosphere of reflection. Winter pairs the design back to essentials: evergreens, sculptural branches, the subtle glow of lighting against the quiet. Each season overlays a new layer of identity, keeping the garden alive as a theatre of time. For the architect, designing with seasonality means planning not only for the present, but for the unfolding story that repeats itself year after year. Water, too, can become a profound element within the small garden. Not in the form of grand fountains or sprawling ponds, but as delicate gestures of sound and reflection. A narrow water channel tracing a wall, a compact fountain tucked between planters, or even a bird bath designed with sculptural clarity, all can serve as focal points that expand sensory experience. The movement of water introduces rhythm, the reflection of sky on its surface expands perceived space, and the gentle sound provides a counterpoint to urban noise. It is in these subtle touches that the garden begins to transcend scale, offering experiences usually reserved for larger landscapes. The sensory experience is never limited to sight alone. The fragrance of herbs carried on a summer breeze, the texture of smooth stone beneath bare feet, the rustle of grasses in motion, these are as vital to design as the visual composition. A garden designed architecturally considers the human body as a participant. Where do hands reach? Where do eyes rest? Where does the ear turn to listen? In a small garden, the intimacy of scale ensures these questions are felt more directly. Every element has the power to engage, to invite, to ground the inhabitant in the present moment. Sustainability, reintroduced in this final phase, becomes not only practice but philosophy. The garden serves as a microcosm of responsibility. Rainwater harvesting, composting, the use of native or climate-appropriate plants all demonstrate that design is not only aesthetic, but ethical. Even the smallest patch of soil can contribute to ecological health, provide habitat for pollinators, and lessen environmental strain. The edible dimension further enhances this. Herbs near the kitchen, vegetables within reach, fruits that grow despite limited size. Each harvest, however modest, reminds us that design can nourish not only the eye, but the body. The architect's role is to orchestrate this practicality so that it feels natural, woven into the design rather than imposed upon it. The garden's role in daily life must also be considered. It is a stage for family gatherings, a backdrop for quiet reading, a sanctuary for meditation. The placement of seating, the orientation of pathways, the framing of views, all must anticipate human presence and use. In compact areas, the efficiency of design ensures that a single corner can shift functions across the day: a breakfast spot in morning light, a workspace with the scent of herbs at noon, an intimate lounge beneath lantern glow at dusk. Versatility, once again, is key, and the architect's task is to make transitions feel effortless, natural, as though the garden has always known how to respond. Symbolism and meaning can be introduced subtly to enrich the garden's identity. A small sculpture placed at the convergence of paths, a tree chosen not only for shade but for its cultural significance, a sequence of plants that recall memories of travel or heritage. These layers transform the garden into more than a composition of materials. They turn it into a reflection of the people who live alongside it. Just as a building tells the story of its inhabitants through form and function, so too can a garden tell their story through living matter. And then, finally, the perspective widens again. The small garden is not merely personal space, it is part of a broader urban or natural fabric. It may soften the rigidity of surrounding architecture, offering a glimpse of green to passers-by. It may serve as a habitat for birds, insects, and butterflies, enriching biodiversity within its modest boundary. It may stand as a gesture of beauty in neighborhoods where concrete dominates. In this way, the small garden, though intimate, contributes to something larger. It demonstrates that even in limited square footage, design can serve both human and ecological communities. In conclusion, the architecture of a small garden is not about reduction, but about refinement. It is about using vertical space to expand perception, containers to shape movement, furniture to merge human and natural presence, lighting to extend atmosphere, sustainability to ground the design in responsibility, and integration to unify the garden with the home. Above all, it is about creating an environment that speaks to the senses, to memory, to ritual, and to belonging. The small garden is proof that design thrives under constraint, that creativity flourishes when challenged by limits, and that intimacy can offer as much grandeur as scale. In its modest frame, it holds the essence of architectural truth, that beauty is not measured in size, but in thought, care, and the harmony of living elements composed into a timeless design.